The MSU Foundation is celebrating 50 years of impact, enhancing research, encouraging innovation, supporting entrepreneurship, and facilitating economic development through modern commercialization practices, venture creation activity, and innovation partnerships at Michigan State University and across the Michigan. And across Michigan, there's only one Michigan. But the MSU Foundation, now really known as the MSU Research Foundation, which we'll get into, is celebrating 50 years of making MSU a much better place. And we have Executive Director David Washburn here to talk about it. And Dave, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you. So first, a little bit about your background. Where are you from? How did you get interested in this kind of important work?
Well, I'm from Illinois originally. I grew up in Champaign-Urbana, which is another Big Ten college town. And the first sort of dozen years of my career were in venture-backed software startup companies from about 1988 to 2000. And you and I are old enough to remember when the dot-com crash hit. And during that time, I took a consulting job at the University of Illinois Tech Transfer Office to help them commercialize some software. And 24 years later, here I am still in the university commercialization space. So I didn't know it at the time, but I made a career pivot out of the dot-com crash that happened in 2000.
Yeah. So then what attracted you to come to MSU, and how long have you been with the foundation here?
Well, I've been here for close to 10 years. I got here in February of 2014, and I was recruited here after a national search. George Benson, my predecessor, retired, and they did a search, and I think what attracted to me to Michigan State was I think a couple of things. Was it's a Big Ten university, which is where my roots are, and in the Midwest. Prior to Michigan State, I'd been down at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where I was CEO of their research foundation. But I think coming back to the Midwest and the Big Ten, I think was certainly attractive, and I think the foundation had a really wonderful opportunity ahead of itself. We had flown under the radar for many decades, and when you unpack the story of the foundation, it was like, holy cow! There's not very many organizations that exist like this in North America. And so I just really viewed it as an opportunity to make a difference. So that's why I came.
So what is the MSU Research Foundation, sort of, and take us back to 1973, sort of, why was it formed, to meet what needs, and how is that mission sort of evolving into the next 50 years?
In the late 60s and early 70s, I think most public universities came to the realization that state support probably wasn't going to be able to keep pace with the growth and expansion of public universities. And so many universities set up fundraising organizations to help find alternative sources of revenue to help meet all of the sort of desires and ideas that big research universities have. And Clifton Wharton, who originally founded the MSU Foundation, was certainly plugged in to what was going on at the time, and he convinced the university and the board of trustees that we should create an outside foundation to help us with fundraising. So that was the original goal when it was formed in 1973, was to get involved in helping the university do advancement.
And so why was it important to add the research to the title MSU Research Foundation just recently?
Well, that's a long story, but I'm happy to tell it.
Yeah.
I think certainly in the first decade of our existence, we did go out and help the university do advancement, and so I think you can go back to one of the first campaigns was an enrichment campaign where the university in the mid-70s was raising $17 million to build a library of the future and a performing arts center, and they wanted to endow new professors. And the way we got involved was that we would deal with non-cash gifts or other sort of financial instruments that were a little exotic. So gifts of life insurance or gifts of land or gifts of art or other sort of non-cash gifts that had to be sort of monetized. And that's where we got involved in. Some of the early non-cash gifts that came into the university, some companies donated some patents to the university, and they said, well, I don't know what we're going to do with these things. Let's give them to the foundation and see if they can figure out what to do with them. And the foundation did back then find a home to license those patents and created a small income stream. So this is in the mid-'70s. And I think that income stream is what started the sort of early growth of the foundation sort of asset base. And as the funds started coming in from the royalties off those patents that were donated, those dollars, when they became available, started to get transferred over to the university. So we said, hey, here's some money that we earned from this activity. Well, why don't you find something to do with it, university? Here's the money. And that's really, I think, how it started. I think one sort of major inflection point that happened at the foundation was the discovery of the cisplatin and carboplatin cancer therapeutics. And so this is an unbelievable story.
Dr. Barney Rosenberg.
That's right. And I know by the end of this conversation, I should answer your question of why we added the word research to our name.
We'll get there.
But hopefully that we'll get there. But I think the discovery of cisplatin and carboplatin in the mid-'70s is an unbelievable story that not a lot of universities have stories like this. But we were involved because we were, again, dealing with intellectual property and dealing with patents, and so the foundation got involved. The Cliff Notes story on cisplatin, we faculty researchers here at MSU discovered a cure for cancer. It was platinum-based drugs, and they were patented and licensed to Bristol Myers Squibb, who turned that into a product, and that product went on to save millions of lives. And it generated millions of dollars of royalties that came back to the foundation from that activity. And so, from a period from 1979 to 2004, when these patents were active, the foundation received something on the order of over $325 million in royalties. And so, I think the foundation was smart during that time. They decided to sort of turn this into a sort of a flexible and enduring resource that we could use, sort of put in place and help the university for the next 150 to 200 years. And I think that's what we've done. Along the way, we've gotten more or less out of the helping university advancement, the growth and development of that whole group, university advancement group. That
I was going to ask you, how are you different from but complement university advancement?
Yeah. We still help them in a couple of different ways with some contract gift annuity stuff, some life insurance policy stuff, some real estate things, but most universities have a very sophisticated advancement apparatus in place now. Michigan State is no different. Right. The team that's in place now and where they've come from the mid-'70s is just so different. It's a professional operation. And so we help very, very, in small ways, but they've built out a lot of the infrastructure to handle most of that stuff now.
Dave Washburn is my guest on MSU Today, the executive director of the MSU Research Foundation. And Dave, give us maybe some examples of how you help out, and maybe talk about Red Cedar Ventures, Spartan Innovation, some of the ways you're set up and how you actually go about helping.
Well, so I think the evolution of during the time cisplatin and carboplatin came along. There was important legislation that was passed, bipartisan legislation called the Bayh-Dole Act, which was put forth by Birch Bayh and Bob Dole, sort of senators on the opposite side of the aisle. And what that legislation allowed is for it used to be that when the feds provided funding for research, any intellectual property that was created from that was sort of the property of the federal government. And what Buy and Dole decided was and figured out is that, it'd be better if the universities own the intellectual property. They actually have a better chance of getting it out the door to help, solve hard problems.
Yeah.
And so about the time that cisplatin and carboplatin was rolling out, the Bayh-Dole Act kicked in, and all universities across the country started to build these university tech transfer offices and try to get engaged with discovering new innovations that could solve problems. And there's a lot of great stories across the country that have, new technologies that have come out of universities, not dissimilar to cisplatin or carboplatin. And so we've sort of gotten involved in that space. And when you're doing licensing and tech transfer, typically what would happen, a faculty member discloses an invention. The university has to decide if they want to file a patent on this. And they go through this rigorous process of determining sort of what's the market for this. If we file this patent, it's an expensive thing to do. Do we have a chance to actually license this out and get our patent costs back? Yeah. But also that there could be a recipient on the other side that could turn that into a product or service that to commercialize the technology. And so typically you would take these patents and you would go calling on existing companies to license the technology to them. And I think what happened is that many times the technologies that are sort of mature university technologies are still very, very early stage for an existing company to sort of pick up. So there's this gap that exists between the sort of the handoff of a late research stage project versus, what a company might take on. And so many faculty and university decided, well, what if we just start new companies and go out and raise venture dollars to see if we can sort of build up a product or build up a service here locally with some local venture dollars. And that trend started really, I think, in the early 80s as well, as Bayh-Dole kicked in. And that's a space where we've played in for a long time. As the cisplatin royalties came in back in 1982, there's a local company here called Neogen, which was formed. And Neogen was formed to commercialize some technologies coming out of the ag bio research happening at Michigan State. And so the foundation made the first investment in Neogen in 1982.
Wow.
And today this is a publicly traded company with, close to 2,000 employees with locations all over the world. So that's been a really, really great story. Probably the very first startup that came out of Michigan State.
Wow, some real foresight there.
Yeah. I can't take credit for it. My predecessors do, yeah.
Well, and what about, Dave, sort of bigger picture, and as we move into the next 50 years, what are some of the things the MSU Research Foundation is maybe looking ahead to helping out with?
Yeah, I think our focus now at the foundation is in a couple of areas. I would sort of refer to them as more venture creation.
Okay.
So we have an entity called Spartan Innovations, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the foundation. And Spartan Innovations works closely with MSU Technologies, which is the patent office at the university. And together they try to identify new inventions that could form the basis of a startup company. And what Spartan Innovations does is identify these things and then go through a process of trying to figure out and write a business plan. Identify the right type of thing. How do we put people and a plan and funding together in sort of a cohesive plan that we could take this thing out to market.
Yeah.
And so Spartan Innovations spends a lot of time doing that. We have entrepreneurs in residence. We have accelerator programs. We have mentor in residence programs. We have a robust regional partnerships with LEAP here in Lansing and the LDFA and Grand Rapids. And I think it's a lot of sort of what I would call kind of public-private industry, university research and innovation partnerships is sort of what we're doing. Lots of states and municipalities are trying to figure out, how do we create new jobs? How do we create an innovation ecosystem? And that's the space that we're playing in a lot with Spartan Innovations.
Yeah. We
have a couple of captive venture funds. One is called Red Cedar Ventures. One is called the Michigan Rise Pre-Seed Fund. And when I got here in 2014, there was no venture capital in Lansing, and we were lucky enough at the foundation that we had resources at our fingertips, thanks to cisplatin and carboplatin. Where I went to the board and I said, I would like to build a captive venture fund so we can seed some of these early stage ventures that Spartan Innovations and MSU Technologies are teeing up. And so the board approved it, and we put together Red Cedar Ventures, and have made close to 120, sort of invested in close to 120 new startup companies. We've deployed close to $10 million out of Red Cedar Ventures, and those companies have gone on to raise, hundreds of millions of dollars from the venture markets in the state and around the Midwest and actually on both coasts. The state took note of what we were doing. We applied to help them with a pre-seed fund program they have, and that's how Michigan Rise was formed.
Okay.
So I think between Michigan Rise and sort of Red Cedar Ventures, we have close to $40 million under management in two sort of robust captive venture funds. And now I'm happy to say that 10 years ago there was no venture in Lansing, and we have a very strong venture ecosystem here today. And I think there's many others getting into the game. The credit union now has a venture fund. Delta Dental has a group that's doing this types of things. And there's a robust angel network here in Lansing and around the state that are also taking note of the deal flow that's coming out of Michigan State.
Our good friend Jeff Wesley leading Red Cedar Ventures.
Absolutely.
Yes. So
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Dave, if congratulations on 50 years. As you look ahead again, just what do you want those joining in on our conversation to know about the foundation and your work?
Well, I think in addition to the venture creation and venture investing activity, another big area that we think about and work with the university on a lot is in this area of sort of what I would call innovation parks. So we do have a pretty robust real estate platform at the foundation. We own about 200,000 square feet of space in and around Lansing and East Lansing. We worked with McLaren Greater Lansing to bring their brand new hospital to what used to be called the University Corporate Research Park. And that is now referred to as the University Health Park. We developed the TechSmith building in the old Spartan Village space, as I refer to it now as Crescent Road. And we built a headquarters for TechSmith because they have a very robust student internship program. Over half of their employees are MSU alumni, and they wanted to be closer to campus. They're a huge partner to computer science and comm arts, and they wanted to be closer, and they wanted to be under one roof, and they were trying to compete with the Googles and Amazons of the world, and they thought if they had a really cool campus, they would have a shot, and I think that's helped them. We've got an incubator in downtown East Lansing. We have the Bridge Incubator in Grand Rapids, and then we have the Van Camp Incubator on Grand River out by the Whole Foods in Meridian Township. And so we're building spaces so as we start up new companies, not only do we want to help them with their business plan, provide them some early stage funding, but we're trying to find them a home in and around our ecosystem. And we think that combination all leads to sort of economic development, job growth, economic diversity, and that's really, I think, the place where we collaborate and help MSU.
Well, Dave, again, thank you for joining me again on MSU Today, and all the best. And thank you for your great work helping this wonderful university move forward.
Well, thank you. And anytime we can tell you more about it, we are up for it. So thank you.
That's David Washburn, Executive Director of the MSU Research Foundation. Much more online at msufoundation.org. And I'm Russ White. This is MSU Today.